This commodity, more than gold, more than silver, has done incredibly well for me over the past year, and I think it's just beginning. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching Yankee Stacking. Since last September, about a year now, gold has been slightly down, about 1%. Silver has been down 15%. And full transparency, my gold and silver mining stock portfolio has suffered too. Yes, but that's okay. I'm playing the long game with those positions. But this commodity position in my portfolio has been up 60% since last September, 6-0. I went in on uranium after researching the sector, and I specifically bought 1,950 shares of Uranium Energy Corp. I did a video on it back then, and I put my money where my mouth is. Now, I'm not a professional financial advisor, and you should not invest in anything I just feature on my channel just because I like them. You research them yourself, make your own investment decisions. While this video is being sponsored by Uranium Energy Corp, that should not dissuade you from listening to my incredible interview with their CEO, Amir Adnani. Stacking silver and gold is an absolute must, but investing in commodities outside of silver and gold is also a must for me. So join me as I welcome Amir Adnani of Uranium Energy Corp. Welcome, Amir. Thank you so much for joining Yankee Stacking.
Hey, it's a pleasure to connect with you. These are exciting times.
Yes, they are. And Amir, you founded both gold and uranium companies and know both industries really well. And I know you're focused primarily on uranium right now, but before we get to that, what has 2022 taught you about the importance of owning physical gold?
I'm an entrepreneur with an interest in the two yellow metals. They're both very important to me, very close to my heart, gold and uranium. And these two yellow metals provide two attributes that are so thematic in 2022. Gold is a currency. It is the ultimate currency. And in a year where the word inflation is so important that even politicians are naming their bills Inflation Reduction Act, this could not be a more important year for gold because it is the ultimate currency. It's the one that you can't fudge, you can't fake, you can't mess around with. And so what a thematically important year to be in the yellow metal called gold. And again, I think the best is yet to come for gold in terms of now, especially today, the dollar index finally kind of breaking off a bit, finally kind of cooling off. I think today was the first time we've seen the dollar index kind of tip below that 50-day moving average since February of this year. Big, very important indicator for the commodity bulls, because again, all commodities are priced in US dollars, and that was important to see it finally take a breather. So the best is yet to come for gold. But the other yellow metal, uranium, which has basically uranium equals energy and energy equals life. And how could you have all of that without dependence on your own ability? And energy independence has become such a key issue because of Russia weaponizing its energy resources and basically taking Western Europe hostage. You know, in Western Europe, they're now telling people in Spain, for example, to not take their air conditioning units above certain limits because they got to ration energy. They don't know what's going to happen in the winter, and winter is coming in Germany because Russia could simply say, no more gas for you. So all of this really teaches us the importance of energy independence and why it's important to be energy independent, because then you can never be taken hostage, especially by hostile nations that have their own agenda that they're driving. And unfortunately, in the case of Russia, it's an agenda of war. And so what, again, like I mentioned, for the two yellow metals, 2022 could not be more instructive and more of a year that really makes you appreciate why you need to be in hard assets.
Yeah, the Russian situation just is horrific. It keeps dragging on and on. Putin seems to be digging in. as sad as that conflict is, it is good for the energy sector, no?
I've been an entrepreneur in the uranium sector for 18 years. For those 18 years so far, we've had maybe 3 good years and 15 bad years where uranium has just been hated. Now, all of a sudden, over the last year, uranium is one of the best performing commodities in the world. The market is waking up and realizing that the Western world, and particularly the United States, is going to be hungry for more energy. Everything we do is requiring more energy, more electricity. And now everyone wants that energy and electricity not to be available all the time, but also to be available on an emission-free basis. Because we've got all these concerns about climate change. Fine. How can we live without nuclear power? We can't, because nuclear power is baseload, around the clock, and it is emission-free. So to answer your question about energy, I think there are incredible opportunities right now in the energy landscape if you're involved as an investor, as an entrepreneur, to build businesses that can satisfy the current and long-term growing demands of our societies for energy, electricity at all times, especially with electrification, where everyone wants to drive an electric vehicle. It means you even have more demand on electricity needs.
Amir, do you think Russia's actions have really fast-tracked this whole pivot away from fossil fuels by a lot of nations? And how dependent is the U.S. on foreign uranium imports?
Well, listen, I think Russia's actions and hostilities have changed the geopolitical landscape for a long time to come. Look at all the major Western corporations, from McDonald's to Shell, to not just energy companies, but food companies, retail companies that have pulled out. You don't just pull out and then next year change your mind and go right back in. These are long-term seismic type shifts that will have ramifications. But because Russia is an energy powerhouse, the impact of the separation from Russia, the impact of the fact that we cannot rely on Russia, it is not a reliable source of energy, you're going to feel it in energy more than anything moving forward. Now, the United States government has already taken action to ban import of hydrocarbons coming from Russia. Russia has retaliated by saying, we will not export hydrocarbons to unfriendly nations. But the big secret here, the kind of open secret, because we're going to talk about it, is that the U.S. is still heavily dependent on Russian uranium or imports of Russian nuclear fuel, making up 50% of U.S. requirements. There are people in U.S. government, there are senators and congressmen on a bipartisan basis that are now saying, enough is enough. We got to just ban this Russian uranium situation. We got to get off of Russian uranium dependency for all the reasons we just discussed. And any day we may wake up and the Russians have done a retaliatory sanction, the same way they've done now with hydrocarbons. So how does that impact us? That impacts 1 in every 5 homes in America, because 1 in every 5 homes in America is powered by uranium, which is the fuel for nuclear power. So nuclear power is the energy source for 20% of U.S. electricity. And half of the uranium requirements, the fuel to provide electricity for 1 in every 5 homes, is coming from Russia or countries that are aligned with Russia, i.e. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. These are profound facts to think about in today's world where this isn't a spin. We're not spinning anything here that you and I are talking about. These are just hard facts. And when you think about how Russia has utilized its energy dominance in really screwing it into Europe and Western Europe, and how life is so complicated right now in Western Europe. And again, they're afraid about what's going to happen in the winter. We cannot allow that to happen now. And this is a wake-up call forever to say, you control your own energy destiny, because that's how you control your life. What is so fascinating, and your viewers might be familiar with this, is that over a decade ago, during other administrations, somehow the Russian government was allowed to acquire U.S. assets for uranium mining on U.S. soil in places like Wyoming, and controlled it and owned it for almost 12 years. And this was a geopolitical mistake. This was just, God, I have no idea why this was ever allowed. By the way, a U.S. company will never be allowed to go and own uranium assets in Russia, yet they were allowed to do it over here. That company was called Uranium One. And my company, Uranium Energy Corp, a Texas-based company listed on the New York Stock Exchange, last year we stepped up and said, not only is this a great deal for our shareholders to acquire Uranium One from the Russians, but it's also going to go a long way towards enhancing energy and national security in the U.S. We did this before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We did this before war, but we could see the writing on the wall. And we made a decision, and it was a bold decision. And at the time, no one wanted to step up and pay the Russians $120 million cash, but we did. And then 30 days later, you see, boom, Russia has made this invasion. And now here we are. Everyone's talking about how do we get off of this Russian dependency? And I got to tell you, I'm proud of the fact that not only did we make that investment to buy Uranium One, but we've spent 18 years putting together the foundation, the platform, where today, I'm proud to say UEC, Uranium Energy Corp, is the largest uranium company in the United States by market cap and by total permitted resources that we have, that at the right uranium price, we can bring into production.
It's one of the reasons why I became a shareholder about a year ago, and I'm very happy with the performance of
you've
Uranium
done well.
Energy
Your
Corp.
timing was great. Yeah.
I know, right?
If I remember correctly, I think the stock was around $2 a share when you got in. And
exactly.
It's close today at $4.24.
$4.26. I just checked. Yes. as of the recording of this video. Could runaway inflation actually derail this bullish optimism over uranium?
Not at all, because uranium, in fact, I'm really happy you brought that up.
Okay.
Because look, whether we're in a recession or not, right? Because I know there's a lot of debates about that. Are we in one? Are we going into one? Uranium is completely unaffected by recession fears or a recession itself. Why? Because it is a commodity that is only used for one thing, which is being a fuel in a nuclear power plant. And those reactors run 24/7, and they're the backbone of our energy grid. They will never be shut down. Uranium makes up less than 5% of the cost to run a nuclear power plant that's already operating. So it's a small percent of the cost. You have price inelasticity. You've got over 90 reactors in the United States alone that require uranium. And we're getting the majority of it from Russia. The biggest players in the world are Russia and China. And so there really is now a concerted effort. Look, again, there's no spin here. Everything I'm telling you is also evidenced by the fact that the United States government has recently launched a national uranium reserve. And if you go and read what they're talking about, they've said openly, we are concerned about the fact that the global nuclear business has gotten away from us and is controlled by China and Russia. The United States government just made a milestone, historic investment in nuclear power plants in the U.S. in the latest Manchin bill that was that came out. The Department of Energy has put out a tender looking to purchase 1 million pounds of uranium, and this is part of creating the National Uranium Reserve. This is basically the government stockpile of physical uranium. This is the first time since the 1950s that the U.S. government has said, we're stepping in, we're going to buy physical uranium. So this conversation is taking place at a time where the backdrop of what's happening in nuclear energy, what's happening with the U.S. government, what's happening with the Manchin bill, also known as the Inflation Reduction Act bill, is so bullish for nuclear energy. In the 18 years that I've been in this industry as an entrepreneur, I have never seen such a bullish setup in terms of all the stars aligning from a demand point of view, policy point of view, and the supply side being so vulnerable because of geopolitical events that have long-lasting impact on a bifurcated market between West and East. But finally, a uranium market globally that has been completely dead and out of favor for over a decade. So there was no investment being made. It had a huge gap of 200 million pounds of annual demand globally versus 130 million pounds of annual supply from mining globally. So that's a 70 million pound per year deficit. There isn't a single uranium mine under construction in the world today that's going to produce 70 million pounds. Uranium mines produce between 1 to 5 million pounds of uranium annually. And there's, to get to 70 million pounds, which is that deficit that we have right now, will take a massive undertaking. We're going to need a much higher uranium price. Uranium prices, I think, are going to have to be, there's industry consensus around this. Uranium prices need to be at least twice as much as what they are right now before we start to see incentive levels to build brand new uranium mines, especially in an inflationary world with supply chain bottlenecks and labor issues.
So I checked out some of the analysts researching UEC, saw I think 4, all of them rated you a strong buy. I think the average target share price was $6.15 or something. One of them had you over 7.
I think it's a company that's demonstrated and has validated what our business plan and what our execution has been. That look, we're building a leading company in the space. It is validated by the shareholder base and the institutional investors that we've attracted. A balance, 20% of our market cap is in cash and physical uranium and liquid assets. That's impressive. We have no debt. We have over $180 million of cash and liquid assets, again, including physical uranium that we own and store on U.S. soil. And when you look at the fact that it takes many years to get just the permits to mine uranium, in that environment, we have 7 fully permitted uranium projects between Texas and Wyoming. And I got to tell you, I would much rather in this environment today to be in Texas or Wyoming versus Uzbekistan or Moscow or
Russia,
Kazakhstan.
right. Yes.
Yeah, we're in the right address, okay? We're in the right address to supply uranium domestically or to Western utilities or to the U.S. government. And we announced recently that we have submitted a proposal to supply uranium to the U.S. government for the National Uranium Reserve. So again, this is the sort of story that you have here as a company that has really all the attributes, but the right market opportunity. And finally, the opportunity we're talking about today wasn't there for the longest time. We were contrarian when this industry was out of favor. And that's why we were able to be early to acquire projects when no one else wanted them. Our Uranium One acquisition, other acquisitions we made over the last few years when the uranium prices were at $20 a pound. Today, they're at $47 a pound, and they're going higher. But we've acquired the business that we have and the investment that we made in even physical uranium, buying physical uranium at $27 a pound, because we looked at it and said, this stuff is cheap and is needed. And it doesn't, the price doesn't belong here. This is silly. But we had to be a contrarian to do that because at that time, no one cared about uranium and it was hated. Now it's starting to come back. But I would say it's got a long way to go because it is still an area that people are becoming aware of. And individuals like yourself are doing a great job interviewing me, and I know you've interviewed other people in the sector as well. This is important information because most people still don't appreciate that 1 in every 5 homes is powered by nuclear energy in America.
That's an amazing stat. All right, people, the ticker symbol is UEC. Super easy to remember on the New York Stock Exchange. So all your trading platforms should enable you to buy some shares if you're interested. I'm glad I did. Check them out. At least put them on your watch list. Amir, how can people get in touch with you if they have more questions?
You can follow me on Twitter. My handle there is @Amir Adnani. My first name and my last name, or you go to our website, www.uraniumenergy.com. As you said, we're also listed in New York. Ticker symbol there is UEC. And I appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, Amir.